Afternoon, everyone. Well, do you guys remember back a few months ago, end of September, New Brunswick had a provincial election, and it was really close. The Liberals, who were governing, had 21 seats, and the PCs got 22 seats, and the other parties, the People Alliance, got 3 seats, and the Greens also got 3 seats. So if you put it all together, the People's Alliance ended up propping up the PC party. So they had a majority, but it didn't go into effect right away. It went into effect after the House came back to sit. And I didn't understand why. I did understand why, but it's easy to misunderstand what's going on. So I'll explain here's just a brief prepper on how our parliamentary system works. So the Governor General and each provincial lieutenant governor governs through a cabinet headed by a prime minister. So that's our system. If a national or provincial general election gives a party opposed to the cabinet in office a clear majority, that is more than half the seats in the House of Commons of the legislature, the cabinet resigns and the governor general or lieutenant governor calls on the leader of the victorious party to become prime minister and form a new cabinet. Now that didn't happen in this case. So if no party gets a clear majority, the cabinet that was in office before and during the election has 2 choices. It can resign, in which case the governor general or lieutenant governor will call on the leader of the largest opposition party to form cabinet, or the cabinet already in office can choose to stay in office and meet with the newly elected House, which, however, it must do promptly. In either case, it is the people's representatives in the newly elected House who will decide whether the minority government, one whose own party has fewer than half the seats, shall stay in office or be thrown out. So that's what happened today in New Brunswick. And the government fell. So the Liberals, what happened was in September, the vote happened. The PCs won more, but not a clear majority unless another party agreed to prop them up. The other party said, well, we're going to hold on and wait. That was the People's Alliance. And then all of the wrangling, and happened, right? And government takes time and people have to talk and especially when it's this close, like that's an essential deadlock. So they had to do all that, but in that time, the government has to follow the rules, and the rules are they have to set up the House having a session, everybody coming in and then having a throne speech. And the throne speech is also a confidence vote. And if the confidence doesn't pass, then the Governor General is visited, the person leading the minority, in this case the Liberals, resign, and the person who has the second most seats, which is the PCs, have a chance to govern. So that'll be the next few days. But here's CTV News. New Brunswick Liberal government defeated, and so 5 weeks after taking second place in the provincial election, New Brunswick Liberal government has fallen after losing a confidence vote on its throne speech. Premier Brian Gallant told the legislature Friday he would be going to see Lieutenant Governor Jocelyn Roy Venu to resign as Premier. Quote, and I humbly suggest to Her Honour to allow the leader of the Conservative Party to attempt to form a government and gain the confidence of the House, he said. Gallant sought to survive with the minority government by adding as many of the opposition campaign promises to his party's throne speech earlier this week, but his party's fate was sealed Thursday when both the Tories and the People's Alliance said they'd vote to defeat it. So there's the whether it's an official coalition or if it's unofficial at this point in time, but they're going to govern in a minority situation and work together, it seems. So that's interesting, and yet another province opposed to carbon taxes. So Mr. Trudeau is going into an election year, 2019, vowing to shove carbon taxes down the throat of Alberta, Ontario, Quebec, Saskatchewan, Manitoba, New Brunswick, and PEI, all of whom oppose in some way or another, except for Quebec, possibly. I don't think they have an actual legal challenge, but I had read that the new premier of Quebec has been meeting with Mr. Scheer, and they see eye to eye on things. So whether it's Mr. Scheer or Mr. Bernier who forms the next government, hopefully, potentially, this carbon tax is DOA. More than 50% of the country and a lot of electoral seats are against it. So good luck running on that in 2019. Here's the Winnipeg Free Press reporting The CEO of CBC tells competitors to stop attacks against the CBC. Ottawa, the head of the CBC is telling private market competitors to back off on attacks against the public broadcaster, saying media need to collaborate on news to undercut the rise of misinformation. Quote, attacking each other is not a solution, says Catherine Tate, president and CEO CEO of both CBC and Radio Canada. In order to ensure trust, we must work together. She also said the CBC might change its peculiar accounting practices, which obfuscate how much taxpayers' cash is going to digital offerings. In a keynote speech at an Ottawa telecommunications conference, Tate said media ought to collaborate to prevent fake news and disinformation from shaking Canadian politics. She did not offer specifics, but told reporters the CBC should share resources with its competitors instead of sending out 7 trucks to the same location for simple press coverage or press conferences. I think we're all realizing the days of straight-up competition in the domestic market simply doesn't make economic sense, she said. And I'm going to skip down a bit. There's a whole bunch of remarks, but overall, back to the article, it says, Tate's remarks come just days after a torrent of criticism over the CBC's decision to air murder mystery and baking shows on television instead of municipal election coverage, opting for radio broadcast and live coverage on social media. In September 2016, testimony to Parliament, the founder of the site iPolitics, James Baxter, called the CBC, quote, an uber predator for putting the bulk of its resources in markets that are already competitive, producing free news that leaves, quote, a profoundly chilling effect on upstarts trying to charge for content. After her speech, Tate said that she'd be open to having the CBC provide more transparency over how it uses its annual $1.2 billion of taxpayer cash. She noted the CRTC just renewed its license, and on the next renewal, scheduled for the fall of 2020, she would provide more data if the regulator asked the CBC to do so. And finally, comparing each 2017 figure shows that there's some accounting stuff. Canadian law only compels broadcasters to report the spending for radio and television programming, not their online offerings. Meanwhile, the CBC reports its spending on 2 separate timelines, receiving its funding on fiscal years starting in April and reporting its spending to the CRTC in August. Comparing each 2017 figure shows that $209 million of the parliamentary stipend isn't accounted for in either the radio or TV spending reported 4 months later. Critics believe that means the network spent that much money on digital services. Carleton University professor Dwayne Weisnick cautions that the two numbers can't be directly compared because of the 4-month gap. It could include the Olympics. He says he sees a lack of transparency in the CBC's budgeting. Quote, the CBC has historically and recently been notoriously bad at this, which really cuts against the grain of them being a good public service media provider, Winsick said. Similarly, the CBC reported a drop of 1,100 full-time working in the television from 2016 to 2017, but 342 increase in overall employees. That makes it unclear if the CBC has more than 1,000 employees dedicated to online content. Speaking generally, Tate noted that CBC reporters often file content for radio, television, and online reports. We approach our news as a multi-platform, right? But the budgeting doesn't. So this is on to me. I think it's interesting. 2 things in this article. Number 1, the CBC is saying, "Hey, stop calling us fake news because we're not fake news," and they are fake news. So start reporting accurately, and maybe people will stop calling you names. And the other is this ask for just why would a private company need to send out reporters for a simple press conference? We've got reporters out there. We'll let you use it. There you go. That's our gift to you guys. You don't need to report on the news. We'll tell you what the news is, right? How scary is that? Like, you guys don't need to do it. We'll just do it. We're the propaganda arm of the government anyway. We'll tell you what's true and what's not true. So, frustrating. So I don't like this. Thanks, Winnipeg Free Press, for reporting on this and giving people a heads up about speeches that the CBC president is having and talking to broadcasters, saying it should be more homogenous. There should be more groupthink. Everybody should say the same thing. Why are you even coming out to the event? CBC will just cover it. Don't even worry about it. You stay home. Check that phone of yours, right? Crazy times. Well, thanks for watching, everybody, and enjoy your weekend. Check out the peoplespartyofcanada.ca.